Aloha and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session, the SCA US Chapter Update for the HCA webinar series here. My name is Madeline, and I'm joined by Marcus Boni today to just have this little update and conversation. It's pretty informal. We want it to be pretty just open for discussion with everybody, but we do have some updates to give as well. So just to give you an introduction to Marcus, he's been a member of the specialty coffee community for over 17 years and is currently the Director of Marketing with Malconic USA. Marcus has held leadership, marketing, and operational roles with many companies across the United States and was the Director of Community Development with the SCA for 4 years. Marcus has led membership and engagement initiatives and program development with the U.S. Coffee Championships, World Barista Championships, Barista Guild, Roasters Guild of America. Additionally, he's been an amazing guiding light for the U.S. Chapter Committee as our leader, and I can personally say he's been incredible to work with over the last year in this role.
Thanks, Madeline. Hi, everybody.
My name's Madeline, and I know most of you probably maybe know who I am, but just in case, I am the co-owner of Pacific Coffee Research. I've worked in the coffee industry for over 10 years as a barista, cafe manager, educator, coffee picker, espresso technician, and events coordinator. I've worked in cafes across the United States and in Australia and have had the opportunity to work alongside and learn from coffee producers in Indonesia, Vietnam, El Salvador, Honduras, and of course, Hawaii. I aim to work toward the elevation of our local industry at all levels of the value chain through education and sharing of resources, and that is just one of the goals that we're trying to accomplish here today, is just sharing information and sharing updates of what's going on with the US chapter. At any time, there is a chat box, so you're welcome to put questions there or any additions that you'd like to have in this conversation, anything that you'd like us to address, feel free to put that in the chat box, and we'll definitely keep an eye on that and address it, okay? Marcus, did you want to just kind of start us off with reiterating our purpose and our mission as the U.S. chapter?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think it's the chapter is its first of a 2-year term, the current chapter that exists with the SCA, and I think it's important to note that while we were formed as an official group by the SCA, we do operate independently of the SCA. We have our own mission and purpose statement. We're specifically tasked with advocating for and engaging with and communicating with and bringing forth initiative and directive from our community to both in the activities that the SCA works with and performs and produces, as well as amongst our community individuals. So I know that's a little bit of a distinction. How I like to kind of really break it down a little bit more simply is SCA is tasked with a larger global initiative. And the US is such a big part of that in a wide variety of ways. And so what we're there to do is really listen to our membership to make sure that those voices are heard, that our community is heard and represented in what the SCA does, and in a very intentional way advocate for our community, and that includes both members and non-members, advocate for their presence and their purpose inside of both the SCA and the coffee community in particular. And so we do stand separate from the SCA, and while we collaborate with them often, we also advocate and communicate when we need to hear more from them, when we need to make sure that there's a higher level of engagement, when communication needs to be strengthened, and when programs need to be felt and supported by our community, and where we need to find more of a presence inside of that too. So we stand separate. And I think what's important to touch on is because we are a new part of the association, the US chapter is new. Previously when it was the SCAA, there was a clear engagement on the level of promoting and advocating for the coffee community inside of the United States. And as the SCA formed into a larger group, a part of that was making sure that there was still presence inside of the SCA. And so while it maybe took a few years for it to happen, an ultimate goal was to ensure that a chapter was formed to make sure that that engagement and that voice and that level of activity carried through and was represented through the chapter. And so it's been a lot of learning, a lot of forming this past year. And of course, a lot of adjusting at this time too. But part of our initial, as we brought our group together, there wasn't essentially a roadmap. Each individual on this chapter was elected by the community. And as there is no specific plan on what we do, our first primary focus was really to kind of establish what our purpose was, who we were there to advocate for, what we were standing for, and start to create systems that really help support communicating and engaging with us as a chapter, clarifying our purpose, and making sure that we were able to amplify the work, the voices, and the needs of our community, both in what the SCA does and in the domestic coffee community. And so through that, we wanted to be clear with what our purpose statement is, what we're there to do, and who we're there to serve. And to read it, this is also on our website that Madeline has provided in the chat here. But our purpose statement is that our chapter advocates for and helps the U.S. coffee community to create awareness of, communicate about, and support local and regional events and education that provide value to both members and non-members. And that's a distinctive point, that coming together as a community, we aren't there to address the value of being a member with the association. We're there to really be the representatives of our community, regardless of membership. And while we can speak to SCA membership, we're not there to drive membership. We're there to make sure that there's clear purpose and representation inside of the association itself. And of course, we're diverse, inclusive, and we commit to being anti-racist. And there is a very intentional and specific update to that statement in light of so much that we are engaged upon in conversation and reflecting upon where our community is at today, that we want to make sure that we're very intentional with those words: diverse, inclusive, and we commit to being anti-racist. And we do that through our actions, our engagement, and specifically when we are preparing any type of community activity, that those are the values that we bring with us. We also remove barriers to participation, advocate for innovative content, and improve approachability, accessibility, and connection to resources too.
Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, for providing that whole overview of who we are and what we do. And as Marcus said, we are a new chapter. And so, yeah, I feel like what we did for a lot of the first year was just kind of listening to people and figuring out what the needs were, and trying to be that connection for communication from our smaller local communities to a larger group, and then eventually to SCA, the global organization. And a lot of the stuff that we have done is aimed toward opening those lines of communication more easily and creating just stronger ways to engage with folks. And so I have, just in Hawaii, I'm a community coordinator for Hawaii, and we are part of a regional section in the US chapter, so the Southwest section, which has a regional coordinator. So the efforts that I made were basically to start participating more with Hawaii Coffee Association meetings and discussions, and really trying to listen to what is happening in those conversations, as well as engaging with baristas and cafe owners and producers, and seeing what their conversations were as well, and trying to bring that to HCA and to SCA, and talking about being an advocate basically for the Hawaii coffee industry in the US chapter. And in terms of the one thing that I kind of have struggled with is what's the best way to communicate with the Hawaii coffee community at large, not just these smaller groups within our community. And it's one of the things that has been used across the United States by different coordinators is Slack. It's an app, it's a communication app. And I feel like some people would be very quick to adopt that and use that and have these conversations, but some folks wouldn't. And so I'm trying to find this way to communicate with everybody as much as I can. And so if anybody has ideas, please let me know. I do try to be present at as many events, now more online events, as I can, but I know that there are always cracks and places that I'm not accessing. And so if that's something that you feel like you would like me to pay attention to, a specific area that you're involved with, let me know. I'm here to be that advocate for Hawaii in general in the US chapter. And I'm here to listen and to communicate and talk to people. And so that's really my goal, and I try to do that as much as I can. But please let me know if there are holes that I'm missing and that could be filled. And one of the things, just in our kind of going back to our mission statement as of removing barriers to participation, is I was a pretty big advocate of bringing these competitions to Hawaii, and so we did for 2 years in a row. We had the prelims for competitions here, and it was exciting. It was amazing to see that traction build also from one year to the next. And we were hoping to see that continue on this year for a third year. And that has not happened. And obviously our conference, our HCA conference is not happening this July. And so we also kind of wanted to talk about moving forward what's going on with competitions. And actually, Marcus, if you would be able to kind of touch on that a little bit more.
Sure.
There was an announcement that went out, but I'd like to recap that some more.
Yeah. So clearly, as Madeline described, we're all faced with new challenges as it pertains to gathering in groups and ensuring that individuals and groups of individuals are kept safe, and really making really difficult decisions to cancel programs, to cancel events. I think we're all faced with new challenges every single day, and one of those was really looking at while we've captured a lot of enthusiasm and energy in moving those programs forward, based mostly on new structures of bringing the regional qualifying events into communities where they maybe haven't had a place before, decreasing the production components of those events so that they can happen in more places, and ensuring that we have the right representation there to support the competitions, as well as make it much more accessible for attendees, volunteers, competitors, to begin their journey, if they choose to, in being a part of those competition events. And with looking at all of those components, knowing that they largely start towards the end of summer, early fall in each season, looking at those components and just realizing that we're not going to be where we need to be in more ways than one to be able to safely pull those off. And deciding the part of the SCA chapter is the competitions committee, which essentially runs these programs from a volunteer perspective, works with a wide variety of individuals to execute on the program, train judges, present the right kind of environment for competitors, and engages with volunteers. That competitions committee, part of the chapter, made the decision to essentially take a year off. We're going to focus on let's not rush into something or try to make something work that we're just not sure the time and energy is actually going to transpire into something that we can safely pull off. Let's also take this pause in this year to ensure that we're being reflective of of a lot of the changes that need to come into the program, the further desire to make the competitions much more accessible, to enhance a wide variety of components, particularly production components, to make it easier for individuals to judge or to compete or to volunteer. And certainly to be very specific and intentional around bringing people of color into the program and making sure that we are addressing the needs of that community in a fundamental way. And the competitions committee is clearly focused on, if we're taking a pause for these very well-intentioned reasons and the right thing to do at this moment, let's pivot to making those changes happen inside of the program. And even just an update today that their general time frame on both the work, all the heavy work that needs to be done with that, setting basically the structure in place to do that work by October, and then moving through April of next year to ensure that the changes are implemented, that action is taken, and the right type of development is put in place. And I think clearly the decisions were made for the right reasons. And I think it's the right time to be focusing on the change that we need to see in that program, that many individuals and groups of individuals have been advocating for years. And furthermore, with those individuals that were not part of the competition, the individuals that basically won in this calendar year, so the Brewers Cup and the Barista Champion, where they were to be going to Australia. At that time, the competitions committee essentially was supportive of them. It's ultimately their decision whether they want to defer a year or not, but the committee was certainly supportive of their decision to defer. And then furthermore, those individuals that weren't able to compete in Portland for the Coffee and Good Spirits competition, Cup Tasters competition, and the Latte Art competition, Coffee and Good Spirits, Roasters, thank you. Those folks will actually proceed to the championship that will take place at SCA Expo in 2021 in New Orleans too. So essentially shifting that to next year to not only perform all the work that we spoke about, but then to be able to execute on the competition next year. And, everything going as planned, then picking up again with all the adopted changes in place into the preliminary and the qualifying competitions, and of course the national, then following that into the next year then too.
Right. So the next time that we will see any prelim level competitions will be 2021.
Correct.
So just to make sure everybody knows that what is going on with those events. It was, like Marcus said, it just felt it was the best decision to make for everybody's, safety and comfort and everything. Along with competitions, I know that we talk about those a lot in the US chapter and in SCA in general, but there's a lot of other work that we've tried to do over the last year. And a lot of those were meant kind of separating into these subcommittee kind of task force groups, which were designed to address different education needs and communication and marketing events. And so while we did a lot of we actually had quite a bit planned for the rest of this year, and things, as I feel with many people, everybody was on some pretty solid trajectories that all got very derailed in March. And we had to make a huge effort to completely shift everything. And so our conversations were about, okay, these events don't matter anymore. These competitions don't really, what can we do to help our community right now? And what are people stressed out about right now? And it has to do with employment and access to information and financial resources and all of these other things. And so the US chapter aimed to share a lot of information through our social media outlets. And that's one thing that I want to say, if anybody is not following the US chapter on Instagram, to please follow the US chapter on Instagram, because there's constantly a lot of information that's being posted and shared there. and I'm going to double check, but I believe it is just at SCA_US. And one of the things that I worked on intentionally for our coffee community was it's called a coffee industry COVID-19 playbook. And I'm going to link it here in the chat box in case anybody has not seen that. It's directed toward cafes and roasteries, and definitely applicable to any restaurants as well. But I basically designed this resource guide of information, not just for cafe owners and business owners and managers, but for employees as well. And this is important information for employees to understand what their rights are, what they are eligible to ask for in terms of just from their employers, in terms of health and safety at work, if they need to take sick leave under certain circumstances, what they are eligible to request sick pay for legally under federal regulation right now. And so this is just a resource for everybody in the cafe, roastery, restaurant space. And it was based off of an outline that Nathaniel May actually shared with the US chapter, who Nathaniel May also was meant to be on this discussion, but he's unable to join us today due to a last minute family emergency. And so he provided an outline, and I just kind of ran with it and tried to find as much information that was applicable to Hawaii specifically. And a lot of it is just about, open communication with your staff, with your employer, with your managers, and everybody in a team. And so it's like an 18-page document. Not all of it will be applicable to you. There is like a table of contents in there, and you're welcome to kind of just skim through there and see which parts are more applicable for you. I will say the part that is no longer accurate is the PPP loan stuff, because the day that this went out, the next day, the PPP stuff got all changed and updated. So that information is not correct in there anymore. And I wanted to do an update, but it's been a lot of work. And so I'm hoping to do an updated version to that. One of the big things to know for PPP loans, just for any business owners, is that the 8-week period is now extended to 24 weeks. And instead of a requirement to spend 75% of that loan on payroll, 60% of the loan must be used for payroll, and 40% can be used for rent and other utility costs. And as I said, you have 24 weeks now to use that money instead of just 8 weeks. That is only for people who want to apply for forgiveness through that loan. So if you're just if you don't care about repaying it and you already plan on repaying it, you can use that money for whatever you want to in your business. But for those who want to apply for forgiveness and not have to pay that money back, those are the two big differences in the PPP loan guidelines now. But yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that people have that document, and please share it. It's not just for HCA members. PCR, we shared it through our newsletter as well. So if you want to share it in your business newsletter to your community, to your network, please do that. It's totally designed to just be sent to as many people in the Hawaii coffee industry as possible, so that we can all kind of just have this information at our fingertips. And these are the kinds of things that I aim to work toward providing for people. It, again, shifted dramatically. I was working a lot more on events and giving information and finding maybe sponsorship opportunities for individuals to attend events or participate in events, and that's all gone now. So trying to just be supportive in other ways. And again, if there are things that you need help with, or people in your network need help with, or would like to have a voice in a specific conversation, let me know. You can contact me. I'm here to help and here to communicate and all of those things.
And as we pivot into some of those needs of our community today, that's been a great thing. Madeline has done a tremendous job in being responsive to all of the pivots that are happening in our businesses and our worlds and our lives today, and surfacing those not only amongst the chapter, but turning that into action, how we gather those resources, how we communicate that out to our communities, how we just simply, with this ever-changing world, in many cases, across the country, we're having daily virtual coffee chats with folks from our communities where we're simply getting on the screen and talking about what problems have we come up with today. How did I make a hand washing station happen? What are you guys doing with your condiment counters? How are you folks addressing, working with your teams on making sure people know how to make the right judgment calls and coming into work, et cetera. All of those things that there's, again, no roadmap here. We have to figure it out as smart and well-intentioned people to make the right decisions. And a lot of those are being kind of both brought together in unique community groups and then kind of encouraged and amplified via the social media channels that Madeline discussed, via our website that's also included in the chat. There's even a COVID-19 resource button under our blog, a news section that is a good example of things coming in waves, just what we're being responsive to. And of course, as we continue really important conversations amongst our community, how are we bringing together our resources to further inform ourselves, to further listen, and to further educate ourselves as we experience a lot of smart and meaningful and important change that's happening too.
Yeah, and one of the things that we also work toward a lot is just advocating for more and better communication as well from SCA as a global association. We have heard from many people many times that sometimes it just feels like there's not information being shared or just communication going out, and that's something that we definitely advocate for. I think in every meeting we say like, we need to, SCA needs to say something about this, SCA needs to say something about that, and we as a US chapter definitely try to do that as much as we can through our own forums as well. And yeah, so if we hear that a lot, and I know that in my own experience in HCA board meetings, especially leading up to Expo, the question was like, what is going on? What is happening? What, do we know anything? And we were having those, I just want to make sure that people feel confident that we were asking those same questions to the association too, and really advocating for quicker response and communication there.
And exactly where the community was rightfully upset and concerned and just generally unaware because of that lack of communication regarding small to really big things that stem from not only what happens at our annual expo, but things beyond that. All of those concerns were brought forth in our engagement with the community, and of course then brought to action inside of what the chapter performs. And that's really what it boils down to, that we're tasked to advocate for the right things that our community is asking for today. And while we might always not get immediately the results that we want to get, we don't always get the clearest answer. That doesn't mean that we give up. And this is an elected volunteer position, and we are there to really commit to making sure that the needs of our community are being addressed, particularly at the association too. And it's a great mutual relationship. We're learning from each other, and we continue to evolve.
Yeah, definitely. To also kind of bring this to everybody's attention, these are 2-year terms that are part of this US chapter and all the coordinators. So we, next April then, I guess, will have another election. So if people are interested in getting involved, I wholly encourage you to do that. And yeah, I would just say that. And so we, even though maybe a lot of our plans have shifted a lot for this year, we are still working toward making sure that whatever happens, we do have a smooth transition and a plan to hand off to the next people, and make sure that any of the work that we started in the last year continues on, and hope that that next group are set up to successfully carry on with the mission and the goals of this chapter. I don't know if there are any questions or comments or anything. Everybody's been a little bit quiet on this one. It's a very casual just update from us, but I'm always looking for, again, just ways that folks would like to see more engagement and more connection with the US chapter here in Hawaii. And actually, one thing I did want to bring up, about a month or two ago, I started a Slack channel called Hawaii Coffee Technicians. And so if you or anybody in the company that you work for or the company you own are an espresso technician, that is a Slack channel that we have a little bit of communication going on there. And it's become a nice place for us to just kind of bounce ideas off of each other and troubleshoot a little bit together. And one thing that Marcus and I discussed actually was that he brought to my attention, just like we could possibly even start coordinating, parts orders together from different companies, because Hawaii just has this, something that I constantly find is that, okay, I have to order a part that costs $25, but the shipping to get it out here is $80, and that's crazy. And so if there's a way that we can maybe coordinate and help each other out with those kinds of things, I'm open to that. I would love to have some more people involved in those conversations in the Hawaii Espresso Techs group. And again, just like coordinating things and working together to make things a little bit easier for all of us. And we can do that through PCR. We have a lot of great relationships with companies on the mainland, from espresso machines, grinders, all of the materials. So just something else I wanted to throw out there. But yeah, I guess if there's no questions or comments, is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Marcus?
Maybe just a point that part of one of the subcommittees inside of our chapter is the education committee. They're a group that's uniquely tasked and built with individuals that are educators in their own companies. Maybe they're ASTs, maybe they work at a campus, maybe they work with a wide variety of programs, but are uniquely tasked to listening to the educator community, the AST community, etc., making sure that there's a voice from the US coffee perspective inside of the educational program. And furthermore, in just a recent meeting that was held earlier today, making sure that there's clarity in the pathways for education for absolutely everyone that wants to seek out more coffee education. Sometimes I think, I'm not an educator myself, but from what I hear many educators mention is that it's not always the clearest pathway to kind of understanding one's individual ideals for pursuing education in coffee. And one key part of what the education group is focused on right now is not only making sure that the content is reflective for our community based off of what we're finding is advantageous for the US community, but more importantly, that they're bringing together resources that help individuals start their journey in coffee. That it's not always beginning with like, I have to go to Expo and I have to take this class and I have to go to this campus and I have to commit X number of dollars. More often than not, that spark starts at just becoming interested and curious in coffee and being able to build resources that speak to those individuals, that are the right things or the right voices we should be hearing in that moment. It's the right blend of perspective to be open and inclusive. And it starts the journey of realizing that through our network as coffee professionals, particularly educational programs with coffee professionals, that they're advocating for the right pathway for for connecting to those folks that are the subject matter experts in the field.
Yeah, definitely. I did also just remember there were a couple of things. One thing is that for anybody who doesn't know, RICO is doing a virtual version this year. Does registration close today?
I'll look real quick.
And additionally, and I'm going to pull up this link as well, the SCA Global Association is doing a second community survey to help understand the impact of COVID-19. And so let me share that link as well for folks. And these resources, this kind of information is really important for SCA to have a better understanding of what's going on in our communities and around the world, but they're really looking at different demographics around the world. And so this helps them decide how to move forward, and what else is wanted and needed by our communities. So that link up there that looks kind of random, the coffee.us3, that is to the survey. And let us know or please do fill out that information. I just did it this morning. It's pretty easy. It's pretty simple, and hopefully provide some good information for SCA to launch from. All right. Thank you, Mark, for being here. Yes, education is so important. All right. Well, thank you all for joining and for listening. And like I said, I'm always available to have more conversation. I'm just going to put my email address here just in case anybody doesn't have it. And
special thanks to Madeline too. She does a tremendous job with the work, the energy, the effort, and advocating both for our larger community and in particular the Hawaiian coffee community. So thank you, Madeline, as well, very much.
Marcus, thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Well, just wanted to say then mahalo to our sponsors for this webinar presentation as well. We have Saber Brands based in Honolulu as our platinum sponsor, Bendig as our gold sponsor, and Lind Insurance Services, as well as Downtown Coffee Honolulu as our silver sponsors. If you are interested in supporting HCA further, please feel free to click a link. There will be a little prompt here that'll pop up on your screen. HCA would like to continue to do more events like this. It takes a lot of time and energy from a relatively small group of people to put these things together, and any support and contributions are definitely appreciated. So thank you for that, and thank you for joining us for these last couple of days here. It's been fun. All right. Have a lovely afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.